listening to The Edge, everything bass fishing, coming to you worldwide from MegaWare Keel Guard Studios.
Hey, what is up, Bass Edge Nation? Man, it is great to be back in the studio. Here we go, man, our mid-November edition. I might want to say gobble, gobble, gobble. It is almost turkey time. That's right. Thanksgiving coming up right around the corner. Next week, it's all going down. We're all going to be eating like crazy, which I really like. Love the aspect of getting together and reconnecting with obviously family and friends. So happy Thanksgiving to everyone out there in Bass Edge Radio Land. We appreciate you being with us as always. And as always, Bass Edge Radio brought to you by MegaWare Keel Guard. That's right. Keel Guard, obviously providing boat owners for protection from grinding salt, abrasive rocks, concrete boat ramps. Don't go out there without a keel guard on your vessel, and always check into MegaWare's Keel Guard's website. You can go to keelguard.com or megaware.com, but be sure you check into all their other absolutely fantastic products for boat accessories. Of course, you got the Flex Step, the battery guard, so needed with today's lithium batteries. You also got the skeg guard. Man, I've seen a couple people take off some skegs. This will save you a lot of money. It's a great product. Check it out, megaware.com. Go in there, browse. Man, great Christmas gifts too. If you're looking for that, just spiff up in the off season before we kick off this 2024 spring bassing season, MegaWare is going to be something that you take a look at. Let's hit up some recent tournament action to kick off today's show. The Toyota Championship, man. We had a big lead up to that here on the program. Talked a lot about it. Had Mike McClellan on for a show to talk about things that might go down there at Table Rock Lake. Mike McClellan, of course, a stalwart there on that fishery. But Chad Mrazek takes it down. He wins the $200,000 at the MLF Toyota Championship. And I've mentioned it before, just a huge payout in our industry. This is absolutely one of the biggest events. But Chad using none other than forward-facing sonar to win that event. It was really cool. I encourage everyone to go over to MajorLeagueFishing.com. They do a great job. Jody White with his day 5. Basically, it takes you back to the tournament waters with the angler, breaks down the patterns and the techniques, give you a little insight. Chad was using a very small finesse jig. Actually looked like he was using also for a trailer a very small little stick worm, maybe like a TRD or something of that nature. But Chad was, like I mentioned already, using forward-facing sonar. He's scanning flats off the main river channel, flats in drains, and you can see he was catching a lot of his fish in that 18 to 25 range. Also talked about using a bait caster. So he was using a bait caster on this. You see a lot with the traditional, what I think has now become a traditional jig head minnow technique with this style of fishing. But Chad was utilizing a bait caster with 17-pound test, getting around some of those cedar trees that are flooded there at Table Rock Lake as well. But snatching those fish coming off of those trees, chasing bait balls. You could actually see him double up once or twice there on that day 5 program. So a huge shout out to Chad Mrazek, a Texas angler, really taking a big leap. I think he's going to be fishing the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals again. He fished them last year. So, man, it was a fun event to watch, what I considered a great event. So Table Rock's a neat fishery. They didn't catch a lot of big fish, but the weights were tight. You could definitely see some separation, guys or anglers that were on the pattern to do well, and anglers that weren't. It's a neat fishery with a lot of bass. So shout out there. What do you expect? More changes in the organizations and structure between Bass, MLF, the NPFL. But really what we're seeing right now is anglers starting to commit and where they're going to be fishing next year. The biggest thing that I think's come out over the last couple days is Jordan Lee moving from the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour over to the BASS Elite Series. Interesting deal there. He basically takes Larry Nixon's legend exemption. Larry Nixon decided to retire, so he's going to take a back seat, enjoy some more time at home, time with family, and Jordan Lee is going to be taking that spot over there on the Bassmaster Elite Series. We had another angler, Bobby Lane, who was going to, basically trudge his road back from the Opens to Major League Fishing, that he decided to take his 2022 Red Crest exemption. That win in the Red Crest in 2022 gave Bobby Lane the option to go ahead and continue fishing the following year based on that Red Crest exemption. So he's going to be fishing MLF next year, which is great to see. Love Bobby's style, love Bobby's attitude in the sport of fishing. He just does an outstanding job. He's really involved with youth as well, so it's great to see Bobby continuing on a large platform, so we can see him on those streaming efforts and lives and that kind of thing. Lastly, what just came out yesterday, a lot of anglers moving around once again. Want to just mention a couple of them so you can follow some of your favorite anglers out there. But Brett Hite, Cliff Pace, Russ Lane, Cody Meyer, Randall Tharp, and Josh Butler are going to be moving from the MLF BBT, and they're going to go ahead and fish the Opens next year, the Bassmaster Opens. Most likely looking for that top 9 finish in the 2024 Opens to requalify for the 2025 Bassmaster Elite Series. And looks like a couple guys maybe also going to leave BBT this year. Jeff Crete, Roy Hawk. Timmy Horton had already talked about 2023 being his last year. Of course, Kevin Van Dam's retired. We all knew that was coming throughout the year. He had a great exit and a fantastic 2023 season. But also another rookie that was fishing the MLF Bass Pro Tour from Mississippi is Mitch Crane. And Mitch decided to, kind of lay off fishing the high-profile events and do something a little bit different. So we're going to kind of see some of these finalizations. I mentioned before, I think we're going to see a few Elite Series anglers also fishing the National Professional Fishing League. I mentioned this a few episodes with Patrick Walters having some great success there. So I think you're going to see some more anglers that fish a professional level and live through tournament bass fishing, try to add some of these National Professional Fishing League events into their queue just to add more events to their schedule with the potential of winning some more money out there. Man, we do know today that our feature angler, Spotlight Angler, is going to be fishing the MLF Bass Pro Tour next year. Man, he is absolutely one of the best in the business. I'm so excited to have him on today's show. He is going to be talking to us about some fall fishing. He's going to talk to us about some lure making. We have none other than Ott Defoe joining us today in the feature angler spotlight. Man, I'm excited to get to this segment of the interview. Remember though, before we get there, don't miss subscribe, like the channel. Love having you all here. You can obviously watch here on YouTube, but we're also streaming audio as we always have been since 2008. We've been out there a long time, but you can catch us on Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, basically any of your streaming platforms out there. Man, we've had, like I mentioned, some great episodes over the last few weeks. Last episode, we had John Garrett, a young Bassmaster Elite Series rookie for 2024. He just had a fantastic interview, and be sure you go back and check that out. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the show, we interviewed Major League Fishing's Mike McClellan, talked about fall fishing. These are tips and tactics that you guys do not want to miss. So be sure to go back and check out those episodes. Man, here we go. We're excited. We're going to go to a quick break. We're going to come back with our featured angler, Ott Defoe from Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour right after these messages. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be back in just a moment.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so choose the protection the pros pick. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our patented technology. The MegaWare Keel Guard is made tough and made to stick. Install it yourself in less than an hour, providing the most dependable, most trusted protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Insist on the original keel guard the pros have picked for 25 years. MegaWare Keel Guard. Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro, release the champion within.
Hey everybody, here we go. Back at it right here, Bass Edge Radio. Man, as promised, right before the break right there he is on the program, Ott Defoe. Ott, thank you so much for joining us here on Bass Edge Radio.
Absolutely, Kurt, man. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. And you can see I'm actually sitting on the edge of the riverbank. Been up here on the island trying to get a path cut in here to a pond. We'll duck hunt a little bit here in the next few weeks. So just been out messing around a little bit this morning.
That is awesome, dude. It looks like tons of fun. Looks like good weather there in East Tennessee for later part of November.
Yeah. The fact I'm out here in a short sleeve shirt is very odd. Yeah, right. We've had, as a lot of the country, it seems, had a very warm fall. We've only had a couple little cool snaps, and they've not lasted very long. Had more days in the 70s than we have the 50s, so it's definitely been weird.
We're gonna get into what that's done to the fishing here in just a little bit. But we've got to tap on to a couple of the changes, things going on in the industry, of course. I don't want to get too dive into it. As you well know, we're an educational podcast. We love, of course, we report on tournament bass fishing, but usually we're reporting on tournament champions and asking them how they caught them, getting super insight details. Kind of off season right now, but so there's a lot of changes going on into 2024. Man, I just want to ask you a couple quick questions to get kind of Ott's take on some of this movement. Basically three things, Ott. I wrote three things down here real quick. We'll take them one at a time. First, how about the platform change for Major League Fishing? Going from it's always been catch and release, which is a great conservation. I really enjoy and watching that concept. It just kind of gives a different feel, a different aspect. But going from every fish counts back to the best five, now back to every fish counts. What's your take on that? You hear a lot of different things from anglers. Want to hear Ott's view? Yeah,
absolutely. With and even when we were fishing in the selects, when that got started, the every fish count part of it is different, right? Every tournament I've ever fished was a 5 fish limit. I fished one team tournament one time that was a 6 fish. We caught like 10 keepers. We didn't know it was 6. We only brought in 5. But my point is, every tournament that we have ever fished basically was a 5 fish limit. When it started, that every fish was different, and it still is different. And I loved that about it, because if you're not different, then you are just the same. It sounds really simple to say, but the live score tracker obviously makes it different, even with 5 fish versus a traditional weigh-in, type event. So you still have the ability to know exactly where you're at on the standings, and to know when you need to make a move, even on a 5 fish. But the every fish part of it, I love personally. I love the pace of it, and I'll say that from the time that I started fishing those events in the selects all the way through the Bass Pro Tour, it made me a better angler. It just did, because regardless of the size of fish, you realize that somebody is always getting bites. And the fact that somebody's always catching one, and if you're not, that there's a way to be generating bites. Right. And it made me push harder. It truly did. When you only need 5, you can fish half the day and not catch any, and it's kind of it cannot be a big deal, if you know something good's going to happen. So I'm excited, because it does keep us different, from everything else out there, and at this day and age, you need, in my opinion, you need something to pull people more in one direction, to
give them a different sense of something to watch instead of the same thing over and over. So
exactly, and the excitement level of it, you truly can't argue from watching a season of 5 fish to all the seasons that we've had with every fish,
Yeah.
that last hour way more intense.
Intensity level way up here. Yeah, absolutely.
Way up. Because every day, every event, there were people who got in the last 5 minutes and people who went out. With 5 fish, a lot of times it was the same. Maybe one person, maybe one person different. And honestly, in the last hour of every day. Other than that, it was pretty well set. Like you could turn it off an hour to go because there wasn't much going to change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's going to be exciting to watch. It's going to be another, kind of return to a lot of the excitement that really grew MLF to what
Correct.
it was, specifically through those cup events and select events when the whole organization got started. So it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Great to hear your take on that. Field size adjustments is the second thing I wanted to get to. And we can talk about business decisions, and we understand that all organizations are a business. They have to be successful. They adjust things to see where the sweet spot is as far as viewership, folks being involved in that organization, not only from a participation standpoint, but obviously from a viewership standpoint. Having a few less anglers, looking at taking the Bass Pro Tour is what MLF has decided, from 80 anglers to 50 anglers. Starting to hear a little bit of rumblings that they may adjust that even a little bit more after, some further evaluation. What's your take on the smaller field and just, what's Ott got to say about that process?
Yeah, that's a tough one because there are a lot of moving parts to it, and you definitely hit on some of them. With the business aspect of it, and I'm certainly not in tune with every aspect of that. So that the smaller field size is a tough one because I've got a lot of friends that doing that are going to be on the outside looking in. There's just no other way to put it.
But everybody's got a shot this year. It's not like anybody that's signing up for the Bass Pro Tour doesn't have a shot to make it, no matter where they have finished over the last 5 years of the tour.
Exactly, and that's the beautiful part of the way it is structured. I mean, the guy who has the worst career average starting this year, and 1 year can fish his way in. The rookies can fish their way in. Everybody has an opportunity. That is the good part, is that there are people locked in, but there is nobody locked out. So you can perform and get in. So that is the way it was structured, was the best to give the most people the most motivation to fish their way in. So that part of it was good. But as far as as far as the decision as to why to do that, or if it's right or wrong, dude, I have no idea, and I think only time will tell. I can see reasons why you can make an argument of how it would be better, and I can see a lot of reasons as to how it wouldn't. To be honest, so that's. Yeah,
it'll be fun to watch and see how it all boils out. That's for sure. And who knows? A business goes through more adjustments. Maybe you see more adjustments after 2024 or 2025. I would love, me personally, man, I would love for a business to say, look, this is what we're going to do for the next 36 months.
Yeah.
And for 3 years, you ride a course and really kind of see where that course takes you, because I feel like it's hard to judge or understand how a business is, or consumers are going to react, or how a business is going to react in such short time and segments. So we'll see what happens.
That's a big part. That's a big part of it, because we've not been consistent long enough, truthfully, with much of anything to really get a great feel on it. The most consistent we were with anything was 2 pounds every fish count, and I think we did that for two or three seasons.
Right.
We had one season of 1 pound every fish, and I think we had 3 that were at mostly 2 pounds. We might go to a tough fishery like a Lake Travis or something that was 1.5 pounds, but and that was the most consistent. We had done that, I guess, for 3 years, because this was the 5th year, and then this was the year of 5 fish. So it's like we were just, in my opinion, we were just hitting our groove with every fish and higher minimums, and then that got squashed.
Yep. It's part of it, doing some adjustments, some business stuff. I think the most successful MLF has been is through a time when they were most steady, I guess you might say, which was from that 2011 through 2018 time frame. I think that's when the brand grew the most, and people loved it. People still love MLF. People are excited to watch what's going to happen in 2024. So we're going to see the final shakedown. Last question on this, Ott, and again, I feel like I'm pushing this a little bit, but I wanted to get these 3 questions in. The last one is the angler voice. You know, there's been some change. The MLF was built on this angler voice concept. Anglers still have a voice. They're still listening to anglers. It's not to say that they're just dictating every single function that works throughout the organization, but there seems to be some adjustment there. What's your take there?
Yeah, and so I was on the angler board, angler rep board from the get go. From the time we started Bass Pro Tour, I was elected to that, and served on it up until about a year and a half ago, something like that, and I have not been on it for that last, however long that's been. So I was on it. I've been on the majority of the time I've been at MLF still to date. And we did a lot of things, and we spent a lot of time on the phone, and things we accomplished and things we tried to that didn't. And I've told a lot of people this. I like the fact at times that anglers are able to have a voice and have a say, and to make recommendations more so than anything. We don't make decisions. We make recommendations as kind of our role. And that's okay. There's times when it's good. There's times when we shouldn't even be in the conversation, because as a whole, we're pretty dumb. Just to be quite frank, we really are, and that's, and what you're talking about the inconsistency, a lot of that has came from anglers. It has. And that's, and I mean, is it good or bad? Well, some of it's been good. Some of it's been bad.
We're all our own worst enemy, right?
We're our own worst enemy. And we're extremely, as anglers, extremely guilty of knee-jerk reactions. If we did something once, this didn't go well, we need to fix it right now. Well, you just need to, sometimes like you said, you just need to let it play out and actually get a 2 or 3 year vibe on it, and see if it actually works. And as a whole, we're extremely impatient. We're always right, and that's, when you're making decisions, that's really not a good way to be.
Right. Well, fortunately,
if they take some of our decision making away as a whole, I'm probably okay with it. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
That's a great. You're always the voice of reason. That's why I love to talk to you, Ott, and that's why you've been on the board. You've been a big part of angler input throughout the years, even all the way back to your FLW days. You've been a big part of that, and it's great to hear. Thank you for expressing that to all the listeners out there. Now we're going to get back to some bass fishing.
All right.
All right. This is the fun part. So, man, recently on your Instagram, I saw that you mentioned 2 primary baits you love to fish in the month of November, a jerkbait and a small profile swim bait on a jig head. Man, what makes these 2 baits specific players for you this time of year, and how will you implement them into your strategy?
Yeah, even getting this late in the fall, sometimes the bait's still pretty small, as well as a lot of fish are suspending. Especially if you've got clear water, and that's here in East Tennessee this particular fall. Man, we've not had hardly any rain. And everything is clearer than normal, and that really plays into both of those baits well. That little swim bait's very realistic, very natural, and the jerk bait is too. And then you can kind of generate more of a reaction bite out of those fish. But the fact that a lot of fish are suspending, they're targeting bait, and the water is usually fairly clear, in a lot of places this time of year, that's a lot of the reason those 2 baits are effective. And then it's just about finding an area that, to use them. My favorite around here would be, catch a day that you've got some wind, maybe you've got some clouds, and pushing across some rocky points and that kind of stuff, and, keeping the boat out in 12 or 15 feet and casting up to 4 or 5 and fishing those baits back. So you're sometimes with that swim bait, you can get it close to the bottom, but it's with the jerk bait, it's never about bottom contact. It's just about trying to get those fish to come up to it and get them to bite.
Great stuff there. Now, everybody talks about bait in the fall, and we talk about using forward-facing sonar now, obviously, to find bait pods, look offshore, look close to points, humps, structure, or just off of those pieces of structure where that bait might be suspended. Can you speak a little bit on what your grasp is on bait movement? How do you, besides just, launching the boat, dropping the troller and starting to look around or graph around, where is it that you're looking for these? And do you have, almost like you would talk like a bass seasonal behavior pattern, do you see a bait fish seasonal behavior pattern from, like, say, late summer into fall and then through early winter?
Yeah, absolutely. It seems like, a lot of that bait is early in the fall. It goes back into those pockets, back towards the backs of them and in those flats and that kind of stuff. Where once you eventually had a little bit cooler weather, that bait starts pulling back out pretty quick as the back end of those places cool kind of faster. So that
Mm-hmm.
bait kind of starts piling up as you're working your way back out. And a lot of time, I mean, that bait spends a lot of its time not around any structure by design. I mean, that's they get in that area, and they're getting in the danger zone, for them. So that's why something like wind or current or something like that will wash those bait across a point or across a hump or something. That's where stuff intersects, and it becomes a little bit more traditional and the kind of thing that you expect to happen. So, but yeah, those bait fish, to me, they definitely kind of start pulling back out as it cools off a little bit, and because they're going to end up wintering for the most part, out towards the main lake, and kind of spending their time out there. So, but it does seem like this time of the year, that bait a lot of times in the morning will be down a little bit. It may be 5 to 10 foot deep, and then as the day goes, and if it warms up some or the sun gets up, that bait will pull up shallower, and then in the evening is truthfully when it gets the shallowest and closest to the bank. I'd fished up at Douglas this last weekend, and we'd struggled, to be honest. I mean, we didn't end up doing any good in the little tournament we fished in, but just in the last 30 minutes, I mean, of the day, that we had to be in at 3:45, but after 3 o'clock was the first time I actually saw bait get on the bank and fish start chasing them. So
Wow.
that last little bit of time in the evening can be some of the most effective if you're out there then.
There you go. Great stuff. That way we know we don't have to, maybe we can go to work in the morning and hit the water in the evening, just like we do in the summertime. Just got to get out there a little early with the sun going down fast.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's if you told me I had an hour to fish, I had 1 hour of the day right now, it would be the last hour of daylight. That's absolutely cool. If I was just going fun fishing, that's when I'd be out there.
I like that. Great tip. Great tip. All right. Now, I know that you love running rivers. You're in a river right now, so that's where his heart lies. I know that's where your heart lies. But particularly talking about this time in fall fishing, how long into the fall and into the winter, it's been a warmer than average fall, as we mentioned. It's November. What is today? 17th, and you're in a short sleeve shirt there in East Tennessee, just plugging away. But this river fishing, it's current oriented. We know that that's a major player. How does this current, the rivers, the shallow water, kind of affect this latter part of fall and early winter fishing from your perspective?
Yeah, it really depends on the type of system. So like the Holston River here where I'm at, here where we live, it's a tail race fishery. So it comes out of the bottom of Cherokee Lake, and then flows like 50 miles down to Knoxville before it meets up with the French Broad. But so this being a tail race fishery coming out of the bottom of a big deep lake, it stays warmer, than like a headwater fishery would. The rivers that flow into, say, Douglas, like the Nolichucky and the French Broad and that stuff, those come straight out of the mountain. So you get a couple nights at 28 degrees, that water temperature goes straight down. I mean, it'll fall 10 degrees in a couple days.
Gotcha.
It'll change a couple, so that, and they're generating some off and on this time of the year. So they let some water out. Well, it'll be, it's coming off the bottom of Cherokee. It's 60 something degrees right now.
Right.
So this down here will stay good longer into the winter because it's going to stay warmer. Where that up there, you get a couple of those really cold nights and stuff, it just really knocks the water temperature in the head, and those fish, shut down pretty hard. So, but if you keep mild weather like we've had, man, it can stay pretty good fishing. But you just got to be prepared at any point in time that you get a couple cold nights, it'll get tough. But as a river fishing in general, as as it cools, the fish will go from, in the summertime when the water's at its warmest, you want to be in the very fastest water possible. I mean, right in the shoals, right where the water's moving really fast, and that's where the bulk of the fish and a lot of the bigger ones are going to be. The cooler it gets, the slower the water you want to move to. I mean, it's pretty standard as far as how that works. All the way to the deepest, slowest pools is where they're going to spend their winter.
Right.
So you know where they were at in the summer, they were in the shallowest, fastest. In the winter, they're going to be in the deepest, slowest. And so in the fall, they're going to be somewhere in between. So that's why I like rivers, because I know where they're going to be here, and I know where they're going to be there, and they're only going to be somewhere in between.
Yeah. Now it's interesting. Yeah, like you say, they don't have a whole lot of place to go, right? Mm-hmm. It's not like they can swim from the back of a pocket out to the main river channel and a point and hump and everywhere else in between. But so when it gets tough, and you talk about it gets tough, is that just they just ain't biting? Is it can you change some techniques, obviously probably to get a few bites, but is it just more of a patience deal and just fish become less obviously less aggressive, but just not feeding in general?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And that's, if you're doing the right things in the right places and you're just not catching anything, they're for the most part just not biting. I mean, there's not a lot else that you can do other than maybe drowning a minnow or a crawdad or something, I mean, that's to try to get one to bite at that point in time.
Right.
But yeah, when it gets really tough, and that's what's funny is that it can still be very specific. Like in summertime, man, a bladed jig, I'll just catch them on it. Like this time of the year, I'll get a few bites on it, but it's really not that good. But I can throw a wake bait, and I get just as many bites as I was in the summer. So it's funny that what they key in on. Like when you find the right bait, it is on like Donkey Kong. Anything else, it's like you'll catch some, but you put on whatever the right thing is, and you get a lot of bites. It's funny how specific they will be on a presentation in the river, and it's kind of surprising, to be honest, because you'd honestly think, well, it's going to be the same all the time because the water's fairly clean most of the time and those kind of things. But it's very much whether it's a top, a middle, or a bottom, and if it's a moving or a slow, once you figure out that combination, then you get a lot of bites.
Very cool. Very cool. That's great information. That's why you end up with that little pile of stuff in the corner of your boat, right?
Exactly. But then once that week already know what it is, you just need one rod the next time.
That's it. That's great knowledge there. All right. Last question before we go to our first break. We've talked a lot about bait, moving baits, jerk baits, swim baits. What techniques outside of bait oriented techniques do you like to fish in the fall, approaching, this early winter, late fall, early winter time frame outside of bait-oriented artificial lures?
Yeah, a jig would be my number one go-to. I feel like the last bit of I don't know if crawfish truly hibernate where I live. I don't know, but it seems like there's always a good jig bite. In the fall, so that whether that's a football jig out a little deeper or just pitching a jig around laydowns or on bluff banks and that kind of stuff, usually a smaller profile, more of a finesse style jig is a go-to for me in the fall, and something I can get a lot of bites on, and something I can catch big ones on. I can fish it in a laydown or bluff bank or skip it under docks or anything like that. It's really versatile, but it also just does. It gets bites on those days when a lot of times those moving baits won't, or just a good compliment to them to crank down a rocky bank and then pitch a jig in a tree kind of deal.
Right. Now, a lot of jig heads. You got the arky head, football head, round head. I mean, all kinds of stuff anglers have to choose from on the Bass Pro shelf when they walk in, right? If you had to pick one for a lot of these styles of techniques, fishing through the deep holes, rocks, maybe taking a flip or two at a lay down that you come by. What style jig head would you say is the best overall?
My favorite jig overall is a Terminator Pros jig. And it's a standard jig, but the 3/8 you can take and really trim it down and make it a pretty small profile. And it's kind of an arky, a little bit more bullet shaped than an arky. It's just a good all around head. It's good in rock. It's good in wood. It's got a good hook in it. But that's my favorite all around jig for sure.
All right, and then let's go into the trailer, man. We just saw Chad Mrazek, win this Table Rock Toyota Championship event with basically a stick worm on the back of a jig.
Yeah.
Lot, less action, but maybe create some more buoyancy with this jig. Where are you at in the trailer game? Obviously, maybe a little bit less movement as the water gets cooler, but specifically the types of trailers that Ott's going to be throwing on his jig.
Yeah, it's pretty much going to be one of two, either a chunk, and usually this time of year, when I'm fishing that smaller profile, it's a Bass Pro Shops Elite Chunk Junior.
Okay.
That's a really good little chunk.
That's the old style that's got the two little. Right.
That's right. Yeah. That's one of my favorite just for a simple trailer style. But then a twin tail grub is actually one that I like pretty well. All right. A twin tail grub is one I like pretty well this time of year too. It does have obviously a lot more movement to it, but I think it's something that when it's a really tough bite, I actually get more bites on that little twin tail. For some reason, it just seems to get bit.
That's what we want to know. We want to know what gets bit. So great stuff. All right, sounds good. We're gonna take a little bit of a break right here. But,
okay.
We gotta first give special thanks to Bass Pro Shops, one of our presenting sponsors here on Bass Edge Radio. Bass Pro Shops always reminding everyone that we live downstream. We're going to return with some more bass fishing tactics from Mr. Ott Defoe right after this message.
Plenty of sunshine.
Come on, man, let's roll. What the?
To catch the fish, you need to be one with the fish.
With PowerPole shallow water anchors, you'll get the ultimate in precision, power, and control, so you can catch more fish. No facepaint or phony fins necessary.
Excessive shock and vibration are two leading causes for premature battery failure. Prolong the life of your batteries with the new MegaWare Battery Guard. The Battery Guard sits under your battery and absorbs excessive vibration and bounce, reducing G-shock by up to 80%. Great for boats or anywhere shock and vibration can damage a battery. The Battery Guard can easily be trimmed to fit virtually any custom shape or battery size. Save money by protecting your batteries. Spend more time on the water and less on maintenance. Find yours at megaware.com.
All right, here we are back with some more Bass Edge Radio. Ott's tying up some stuff. He's out there on the water. Man, Ott, great first segment, man. Really good fall fishing tips there for the listeners. Excited to try some of those out and see how some of that stuff shakes out for all the listeners. And, man, you've got some crankbaits out there. You do a lot of lure tankering. Rapala has come out with this Ott's Garage. It's been out for several years. I'm pretty sure the MLF event you won at Lake Fork was part of the Rocco winnings. Is that right?
No, that one was not.
That was?
Yeah, the top 10s at Lake Eufaula. Well, a lot of that was on Slim, but then when I won at the Harris Chain, I caught a lot of those fish on Slim. So those were Slim has played a part in multiple top 10s and that win of all places to catch them on a flat sided crankbait in Florida. So I was surprised by that as anybody, but yeah, no, it definitely did.
As soon as you said, I remember Brian New. I think Brian New won an event down in Florida on a crankbait too. So never can count out anything in the tackle box. So
that's right.
That's pretty cool. Let's talk a little bit about Ott's Garage, about what's going on in there, and you've got basically 4 primary signature crankbaits, right? You've got is it the Rocco? Is that how you pronounce that?
Yeah, Rocco, Slim, Tiny, and then we actually just released Deep Tiny.
Deep Tiny, yeah,
Deep
exactly,
Tiny,
exactly.
Yeah.
Let's kind of break some of these lures down. First of all, when you've got this arsenal of signature baits. What did you make these baits for? Was there a specific time of year, behavior pattern that you felt like each bait would be maybe mostly productive for?
Yeah, there definitely was. With Slim, it's a bigger flat-sided crankbait. I mean, it is. Most flat-sided crankbaits are a little smaller in profile, more like, tiny's probably on the small end of that spectrum, but somewhere in between those two, I think, is where most people think of a flat-sided crankbait landing as far as size goes. But with Slim, to me, it was a pre-spawn bait. The water 50 to 60 degrees, but it's kind of where that bait, in my mind, would shine.
Right.
But then that's what's interesting with it. The tournament that I won, where I caught a lot of fish on it, was in May in Florida. The
Post
fish were
spawn.
post spawn.
Right.
The water was in the low 70s. Like, I mean, it didn't fit the box that I personally had put that bait in. So.
Right.
That was a funny one, just to show myself that I shouldn't pigeonhole something like a flat-sided crankbait to cool water. So tiny, definitely a little, even shines in a little cooler water, and then just tough fishing situations. Like, to me, that water in the 40s, they'll absolutely bite tiny. They'll bite it up into the 50s, and then an early fall bait, that September, October. Shallow, dirtier water, but when the fishing's really tough, I've had some tremendous days, honestly, on tiny. We fished a cup event, or actually a team series event last year, in Texas, and we fished on Somerville one of the days.
Okay.
Pretty tough fishery when we were there.
Yeah.
It wasn't excellent. I had 14 that weighed like 40 something pounds on every one of them on tiny that day. I mean,
Dang.
I had like a 6. I had a couple 4s. I mean, I had some big fish, and I mean, by far the best day on that particular lake that day, and every
And
one of them came on that little bait.
that's a stump filled kind of shallow lake, right? Somerville
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, caught all those fish around standing timber
Absolutely.
on that little bitty crankbait. Yeah, I was catching some 4-pounders and 6-pound. It was a mess, but it was a lot of fun doing it for sure.
Do you have to downsize your line when you go to that small crankbait?
Most of the time, if I'm just in open water, or rocky banks and not a lot of cover, I'll typically fish it on 12. And I actually started with it on 12 that particular day, but after I caught the first big one and it got me wrapped around some stumps and stuff, I was like, man, I'm going to go up to 14. The water was dirty. It didn't
Right.
matter. And so I went up to 14 and didn't, had no problem with it whatsoever. So that's 12 or 14 is typically what I crank it on. But then Rocco was the first one that was a round bodied bait,
Yeah.
square bill bait, and definitely had in mind for it to be a warmer water bait, in that 55 to 60, 70, 80 degree range, anywhere that you'd want a square bill, to really crank around wood, both slim and tiny round billed baits. And you can finesse them around wood, but they will get stuck. I mean, it just is the case with a round bill bait. But Rocco, man, we built it with the idea to throw it in the middle of a lay down, point your rod tip at the water, and crank it, and it to come through it. And it does a very good job of it.
I feel like flat-sided crankbaits are not extreme. If you were to go to 5 bass boats right now with random anglers throughout the country, I feel like flat-side crankbaits one of the fewer style of crankbaits in an angler's box. It's
Yeah.
just, I just
Yeah.
feel like it's not really known,
Mhm.
and the effectiveness isn't really known. But man, when they bite that bait, just like you showed down in Florida and there at Somerville, dude, it's when it's on, it seems to be pretty insane. What
Yeah.
makes a flat-sided crankbait so special? You talk about early spring, but then you've had great success in post spawn with it. What makes that bait, attractive to a bass?
Yeah, I think the way that it moves the water, that flat sided bait, something with the way that it doesn't move as much water, truthfully, is what it does. That that event at Harris Chain post spawn, those fish were still funky, and they were feeding on really small bait fish. Like, that's always a deal when fish are feeding on small bait fish. You will get more bites on a flat sided crankbait. I don't care if it's February or if it's August. If they're feeding on small bait, you're going to get more bites on a flat sided crankbait. And I've seen that. I've fished at the Mississippi River in Wisconsin in August, and you're going to catch more on a flat side if they're feeding on that little bitty bait. That's I don't know exactly the reason. I just know that I've seen that situation play out time and time again.
Maybe kind of a match the hatch type thing. You talked about, and I see this a lot down here at Amistad too in the fall. The bait's real small. Bait's real small, and if you can mimic that smaller bait, just like you talked about earlier with your jerk bait, your small swim bait this time of year, and now we're bringing tiny and some other faster retrieve baits into the mix here. When we talked about bait movement, let's talk about bait size.
Yeah.
What times a year are you going to use a larger lure because your bait is bigger that time of year? What months maybe would you say versus the times of year when the bait seems smaller and you need to downsize?
Yeah, that a lot of times for me, post spawn, typically, I mean, that particular one in Florida didn't end up working out that way. But usually post spawn is when I'm going to go to a bigger bait. Even sometimes, actually, when those fish are spawning, even, and then as soon as they get done, it seems like those fish, when they're on the bed, they're more aggressive towards a bigger bait. A lot of times, they all go through moods, it seems, where you throw a little wacky worm in there and they're just going to gobble it up. But then there's other fish that you throw a 6-inch swim bait by them and they're not going to let it be around. I mean, they're going to at least hit it, if not eat it. But then for me, it happens again in the fall, that September, October time frame. There'll be fish that are feeding on that little small stuff and they can be really hard to catch. But that's the time of year when I do either end of the spectrum. I don't throw a lot of 3 and 4 inch stuff. I either throw a little bitty or I throw real big.
Gotcha.
And I feel like that's one of those deals of either matching the hatch or trying to get completely on the other end of the spectrum and feeding them a really big meal. And that's a time of year that personally I've been really effective. And it's funny because when that happens, like you can actually get more bites on a big bait than you do on a small bait, thinking that you're fishing for numbers. I have certainly seen that where under the right conditions, you got to have the right weather conditions of some wind typically more than anything, but you get the right weather and you can put on a 6 or 7 inch swim bait or a big walking bait and get more bites than you would with something small.
I like it. So you've had a lot of success with the tiny. Now you've come out with the deep tiny, pretty much descriptive. It runs a little bit deeper.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we worked hard to try to get, basically the same action.
Okay.
In a bait that would run 2 or 3 feet deeper, because regular tiny will run 3 to 4 foot on 12-pound line. So it's a pretty shallow bait. But we wanted that in the bait that would get 6 or 7 feet because it is such a dynamite action and fish just really, really bite it well. So we needed that, but in something that would fish a little bit deeper. And that was the one, I'll be honest, it took the most revisions to get right. And it took us 4 or 5 times to try to get that right, but we finally did and was able to get that same action in a bait that would run 6 or 7 feet deep on 12-pound line. And it's funny because I mentioned about regular tiny, and it does decent in wood, but not excellent, I wouldn't say. Deep tiny does really well in wood. That little bit longer, a little bit wider bill, man, really helps protect those hooks and get that bait to come through stuff really well.
I like it. All right. Let's talk a little bit about how this comes about. Or Rapala comes to you. They say, hey, you got some cool stuff in your garage, or you say, hey, Rapala, I got some cool stuff in my garage. We need to make this stuff. And how does that progress evolve?
Yeah, it started with the latter. I was like, hey, I've got some stuff that because I started with Rapala at the end of my 2011 season on Bassmaster. So that was as a rookie. I'd won Rookie of the Year that year, and then won that All-Star event after the end of the season. And they had called me out of the blue. I had never had any contact with them. And they called me out of the blue and said, hey, we'd like to offer you a pro staff spot. And it's like, absolutely. In my opinion, there's never been a hard bait company I would rather have been sponsored by than Rapala, just because of having made balsa baits way back when.
Right.
So they called. I'm like, absolutely. And then, so I've been with them since the 2012 season. That was my first year representing Rapala.
11 years. Wow.
Yeah. And I told them then, I'm like, hey, I've made balsa wood baits. Like it's something they didn't know that,
Like,
when they
dude, that's what we do in East Tennessee, right? I mean, that's since the 70s and 80s.
exactly. So I'm like, this is right up my alley, and at any point in time, I would love to, show some stuff that I've made and whatever. Well, that nothing happened for 7 or 8 years, honestly.
Right.
And I had kind of started making some headway with them, but then after winning the classic, they were like, it was about a month later, honestly, they called and like, and we had been talking more and more about it even before the classic win, and it was probably going to happen. But after winning the classic, they were like, "Hey, we're going to do this.
Let's
We
go,
we,
right.
we think as a brand that this is something that we want to do." And it was a big commitment for them because they hadn't done a signature series type thing like that with the brand of Rapala ever. Honestly,
Right.
I mean,
I think they had done some colors, but no baits, right?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Mike's, Iaconelli's baits, his custom ink stuff, was
Right.
the only stuff they'd ever done. But bait design wise, they had never done anything. And
Right.
and I had Slim. I had been making at that point in time, and Mike, I need to always give a shout out to Mike here because I had given all the guys on the Rapala Pro staff at that point in time. It was an old bait that Rapala had made that I was modifying,
Okay.
and that was Slim. That was what Slim was. And I had given all the guys on the Rapala Pro staff, a handful of them, just like, hey,
Smart move. Smart move.
fish this at some point. And Mike had used it in the classic that was here in Knoxville. On one of the off days, he actually came to the house. He's like, dude, I hate to do this, but can you make me some more baits? I know I'm fishing against you, and you're in a classic on your hometown, but I really need some more baits.
That's a cool story.
So I mean, we literally come here to the garage, and I fixed him some up, 2 days before the tournament, and I glued everything in right. I didn't try to sabotage him or anything. So, but no, so that was kind of the start of it, and Mike helped, help push that through to Rapala for me of, telling them why it would be effective, and a couple wood ducks flying by right there.
Oh, that's cool.
But yeah, so he helped with that.
All the leaves are gone. Leaves are gone.
Yeah. It's been so dry. It's not been terribly cold, but it has just been so dry that there's just no leaves left hardly at all.
I taped a show there just I guess it's been about 30 days ago. I was at the Pittman Creek show there in Sevierville, and the leaves were still balmy.
Yeah, it was
crazy
about
it changed in 30 days.
Yeah, it was about at its peak then, pretty close.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, let's dive one more question into the garage. What's coming up, man? Where do you see? Do you see, like, if you come in with some more signature baits or ideas? Do they have to be forward-facing sonar oriented in today's world? And do you have anything in the works there at the garage? Even though maybe it might not be a Rapala lure, but just something that you're using that's kind of neat, a little bit different, that you feel like might help some anglers catch some fish technique wise.
Yeah, I feel like you almost know something that I don't know that you know, but but yeah, I definitely do. I've had something kind of in my pocket for a while, and that's we've worked on it some. It actually wouldn't go under the Rapala brand, but it would go under one of their brands, and we've worked on it a while, and COVID and everything else, it kind of got put on hold, but hopefully it will be coming through here before too much longer, and be able to get it done. But yeah, definitely got some more stuff coming. And it's funny you mentioned that, because it actually is like so many tournaments, and so much of what anybody is seeing or buying anymore is forward facing sonar related. And I have seen it with my crankbait sales that it has hurt them. I mean, just to be quite frank, it really has. Because that's what people they're buying jig heads, and they're buying soft plastics, or jerk bait maybe. Jerk bait was the big thing for a while. Well, then it's gotten to where it's all Demiki Mena style stuff, on a jig head. So it has hurt all the other traditional baits, bait sales and stuff. Forward facing sonar really has, because that's, even if tournaments aren't all one on it, that's all anybody's talking about. Is how to do this with forward facing sonar, and so people just aren't fishing the traditional stuff as much.
What is that going to do to us? I mean, you think that's kind of scary, right?
It really is. It truly is. I mean, it is really, a little bit. I think we saw it a little bit with Alabama rig.
Yep.
When it first came out, that was all anybody was buying was rigs, jig heads, and swim baits. Like
Right.
you went to Bass Pro, everything else was full pegs. Those was empty.
And sold out, right?
Sold out. I mean, that's all anybody was trying to buy was an Alabama rig or Alabama rig components. So we saw it a little bit then, and it's certainly kind of like that now. So that's the funny part with it. It opened up everything else, and you could go back and fish traditional stuff in a year or two. The thing that scares me with forward facing sonar is that fish that were normally unpressured,
right,
normally left alone, and so they kind of had that rest period, don't get it anymore. And so it to me has even made the fishing on the bank a little tougher, where everybody was like, oh, it's going to open the bank up and nobody will be up there fishing. Well, yes, but those fish that would come and go, and where I live is a prime example. Our fisheries are so wind driven. When the wind blows, you catch them. When it don't, it's pretty tough.
Right.
And it's tough because they don't go up or down. They just go out in the water column. They're in 4 foot. They go out here or whatever they do.
Right.
And the lakes in the Ozarks are a lot the same. Well, they're still getting targeted when they're out there. So then when the wind blows, it's like, even if they come to the bank, they're more educated. And maybe they just don't even come to the bank as much anymore. So that's,
that's hard to say. You have to be tough to think, or at least in my mind, that they're just changing their behavior patterns. And obviously we're seeing more out there. That's what the technology is providing us the ability to do. They've been out there, the whole time.
Right.
There's fish that have been shallow the whole time. There's fish living up in the rivers, the whole time. It'll be interesting. But I agree with you. It seems like a lot of us, you, me, folks watching the show, are becoming pigeonholed on this forward-facing deal and the baits that are effective through there. Maybe we'll find more baits. Maybe we'll develop some hard baits that can thrive through that technique and still, hey, look, when it's 56, 55 degrees in the springtime, tiny's still going to be very effective.
That's
up on the bank.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
So and even if you're forward-facing sonar, we've seen that at Lake Fork, shallow stumps, different places. It's still going to be an effective bait and something that everybody needs in their tackle box, man. This has been a great interview. Thank you so much for really shining some light on some fall bassing. I know you've got ducks on your mind, which is great too. But any final thoughts for the Bass Edge listeners before we let you go here and get back to your wonderful outdoors activities?
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And just appreciate everybody out there listening and follow along. Make sure if you're not already subscribed on all our stuff, social media and YouTube and everything, make sure you do that. And something coming up for Jenny and I, starting December 1st, we'll do our big Christmas giveaway. So make sure that you follow along with that. We'll do 12 days of Christmas there starting December 1st. So be sure you go to our YouTube page and Facebook and Instagram and everywhere and check that out. It's a pretty awesome deal. We give away a lot of great prizes from all our sponsors. So be sure you check that out.
You guys have a great message, doing awesome things. Thanks for everything you do for the industry. Thank you for being here with us on Bass Edge Radio. Man, we're going to come back. We're going to kind of review some of Ott's information that he gave us, but Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour angler Ott Defoe, great luck in 2024, man. We're going to be watching out there. Take care. Enjoy the outdoors. We'll see you again, buddy.
Thank you, Kurt.
All right. Okay, we're going to be right back here after this short break. Y'all don't go away.
Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro, release the champion within. Nobody wants to run out of power when they're on the water. There is a better way. Introducing the Charge Marine Power Management Station from PowerPole that does the work of 3 devices: a traditional battery charger, a charge on the run, and an emergency start system. PowerPole Charge.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. More Bass Edge Radio. Man, that was a great interview. Awesome to have Ott with us here on this program, this mid-November Bass Edge Radio. Man, a couple highlights from that interview. Man, sometimes fish just aren't biting. You hear it from the best angler and one of the best anglers in the world, if not the best angler in the world. Man, Ott Defoe out there fishing rivers and loves that aspect of his home there in East Tennessee. The Nola Chucky talked about, the French Broad, the Holston, and how fish change. You can really see them adapt. He talked about how these fish adapt throughout the year, throughout the time frames of the year, and when you can find that special bait that they are really keyed on, and keep working through those baits. Don't think that it's always just going to be this way or that way, based on the book, as you might say. Even I talked about, he talked of the tiny slim crankbait that he made, and ended up demolishing them in times of year and places where he didn't think it was the best primary time frame. But man, when fish get on something, or you figure out what a bait or a profile that they're ready to attack, you can be very, very successful. Now, one thing I also wanted to mention about Ott is while I was going through looking at the Rocco, looking at the slim, the tiny, and now this new deep tiny crankbait that he developed, is he's got a cool box, man. If you go to, this might be a great gift idea, but it's Ott Pro Baits Picks. You can find this at Bass Pro Shops online. Man, it's got a Terminator jig in there, a spinnerbait, a crankbait, Tokyo rig, some Neko hooks, plastics, and of course, couldn't have a box without some of his signature crankbaits. So go check that out. It is at Bass Pro Shops. You can get it online. Maybe a great, like I mentioned, a gift idea, or something you just want to grab to have what's making Ott so successful out there on tour, because he talks about why each bait. There's a little video that goes with it, but it's Ott's Pro Baits Picks, available at Bass Pro Shops there online. But man, once again, appreciate Ott just breaking down some fall fishing for us, and things that he's saying, bait movement, which is such a critical aspect. We talk a lot about how bass move, but really what critical aspect, especially here through kind of the late summer, fall, and early winter time frame, is how do you find those bass if they're just chasing bait? Well, I heard it a long time ago, and that's Rick Clunn said, if you want to understand the bass, you've got to understand the bait. Ott giving us a little bit of great insight on some of those bait movements, and understanding how we can find that bait to go catch more bass. So, and that was very, very cool. Okay, here we go. Man, there is really no tournament highlights or recaps or anything coming up. There is the early December, I think it's the 6th through the 9th, the Harris Chain Bassmaster Team Tournament Finals. That's going to get that last classic spot. I know we've talked a lot about movement in the organization here and there, and stay up with those. There's a lot of great podcasts that talk about that movement. Bass Edge Radio talking about how to catch more fish. That's our key, and we're going to continue to keep that our key. So keep coming back for more educational videos and chat with some of the best anglers in the sport about how they are targeting bass, so that you can go out and duplicate some of their success on your home fishery and become a better bass angler. So man, that's kind of gonna break it out, man. That's this Thanksgiving edition, I guess you might say, of Bass Edge Radio. We're gonna come back again for a December 1 show right after the holidays. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk more about what's going on in the industry, kind of moving fishing into more of a early winter style pattern. I really see that even happen down here at Lake Amistad down south. You're going to see that in Florida, southern Alabama, starting to transition into some of this early winter. Of course, the Midwest is really going to be seeing this type of stuff. And even up north, a lot of my buddies up north, I was actually talking to a good friend of mine, Alec Morrison, up in at Champlain. And he's cracking some big bags. It's already snowing up there, unbelievably. So kind of interesting stuff. But man, stay tuned. Bass Edge Radio. Make sure you subscribe, like, keep listening to us on those audio platforms. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Man, we're going to keep hitting you with some more info. Bass fishing know-how right here on Bass Edge Radio. Dude, just subscribe, like, hit the comments. We are going to enjoy seeing you here with Bass Edge Radio. So long, everybody. Adios.